Hi there. Welcome to the From Lab to Launch podcast by Qualio, where we share inspiring stories from the people on the front lines of life sciences. Tune in and leave inspired to bring your life-saving products to the world.
Hey there, everyone. Thanks for listening to From Lab to Launch by Qualio. I'm Kelly, your host, and excited for today's guest. We've done over 60 of these interviews now, and we're in the top 10 of podcasts for life sciences, which we think is pretty cool. We love help getting the word out on the life-changing products and the innovators behind launching them, so please rate the show and share it with your friends who are science nerds just like us. We know you have some. Lastly, check out the show notes if you have a story or a product you want to bring on the show. Today we're talking with Dr. Brian Fengler, the co-founder and chief medical officer of EvidenceCare. They provide a clinical decision support system that integrates with a patient's electronic health record to optimize clinician workflows and decision-making. They've had great traction and recently are named one of Inc.'s 5,000 fastest growing companies. It's no wonder why their software helps physicians make smarter decisions in fewer clicks. This may be surprising to you, but many healthcare snap decisions are made after a quick internet search. EvidenceCare is embedding industry-leading content right into an EHS for better and faster decision-making, which saves lives. Let's bring him in. Thank you, Dr. Fengler, for joining us today.
Absolutely, Kelly. Happy to be here.
So we love talking with doctors who jump into entrepreneurship. Tell us a little bit about your background for those who don't know you.
I grew up in upstate New York. My mother was actually a nurse on the labor delivery floor. And so I spent a lot of time as a child in the hospital, hanging out, being around, the hospital and medical care and the nurses. And so when I went off to college, I just sort of always had that expectation that I would go into the medical field. And so, as I got into medical school and started looking at different specialties, I was immediately drawn to emergency medicine, loved the energy, loved the fact that you could work hard and take care of people, at their most vulnerable when they needed you the most and actually make an impact and be there, for those scary moments. The level voice in the room that could think objectively and help solve problems in stressful situations. Through my experience in emergency medicine is where I sort of, identified the gap that clinicians feel very, on a daily basis around how it's so hard to apply the right care to every patient just because the evidence is evolving so quickly. It changes, every year. And every patient has their own sort of unique factors that need to go into making, what decision is best for them. And so that really kind of became my passion and why I ended up co-founding EvidenceCare was really wanted to help bring information into the physicians and nurses' workflow to help them make better decisions and, help them take better care of their patients.
That's a really fascinating story. That's awesome. I love how excited you are to bring your knowledge in to improve the process too. That's great. Walk us through the current state of things around electronic health records and some care variations that we see there today.
Yeah, I think the EHRs are getting better. I think there was a lot of frustration when the mandates first came down. I think there has been a very focused effort over the last few years to help make the clinician's workflow easier, more efficient, reduce clicks, all those things. And I think those are making folks happier and happier with the EHRs. I mean, there's definitely a huge opportunity there. I mean, just 10 years ago, we were using paper and now we have everything digitized. You can only imagine how much more information there's now becoming available, analytics, insights, machine learning, all those things. Unfortunately, that hasn't all been that benefit hasn't all been realized yet. There still is a lot of care variation, depending on what studies we look at, anywhere from 25 to 40% of the care that's delivered to a patient is not only unnecessary or unwarranted, but could potentially be harmful to the patient. If you're exposing them to medications or radiation from imaging tests that's not necessary. And I think that's sort of really the next frontier of medicine is how do we optimize the care that's most appropriate for each particular patient so that we can not only get them better faster, but reduce complications and of course, reduce costs. We don't have infinite resources, as we know, in healthcare. And so we need to do, a better job of delivering the right care to each patient.
You've experienced the gap in evidence-based information firsthand. Tell us about that story and how it motivated you.
Yeah, so sort of the genesis story behind EvidenceCare, and I'll try to be as brief as possible, but sort of a two-part story. When I was completing my medical training in emergency medicine, a patient presented to the hospital where I did my residency at, and the patient had a massive blood clot in his lungs. It's called the pulmonary embolism. And at this time, 15 years ago, there was some debate in the literature as to, what's the best care for those patients. And after our evaluation, we felt that this patient warranted receiving clot busting medicines to try to break up that clot. We were just about to administer that medicine when a whole team of, white coats came down to the ER, and it was the ICU team. And we got in a conversation over the indications for these clot busting medicines. And that conversation became an argument. And the argument ended with the ICU team going into the patient's room in the emergency room, disconnecting him from the oxygen and the wall monitor, and physically pushing his stretcher out of the emergency room and saying, well, he's our patient now, so we'll make that decision. So they load the patient up in the elevator. They take him upstairs, and unfortunately, this gentleman died 5 hours later, having never received the clot busting medicines that we were going to give him in the emergency room. And so this became a big case at the hospital. Because of that case, I ended up doing a year of research, and I ended up publishing a protocol in the American Journal of Emergency Medicine for how emergency physicians should be assessing patients with blood clots in their lungs. And, based on that individual patient's indications, determining what the optimal therapy is for that patient. And so I finished my residency and I moved here to Nashville. And second part of the story now, about 10 years ago, I was working one night at the hospital here in Nashville, and a young woman presented to the ER with extreme shortness of breath. And I walked in the room, and I had one of those moments as a physician where it hit me, just, wow, I need to do something fast because this woman is very, very sick. And the problem is she had a huge clot sitting between her heart and her lungs. And that was bad enough. But as it is, she was also 36 weeks pregnant.
Oh.
And so here I am, and I'm air quotes here, the expert on pulmonary embolism, published the protocol. And I'm still at a loss for if what I do for her, how it's going to impact her unborn child. So I did what actually 86% of doctors do when they have a clinical question, which is I asked the nurse to go prepare that medicine while I ran and found a computer and got on Google and started searching for what happens when you give a pregnant woman these clot busting medicines. And many doctors and nurses have been there where you can't find the information you need fast enough. The nurse yelled a few minutes to me from the patient's room, I need you in here right now. I will go running back into the room, and the woman is about to go into cardiac arrest. And so I went up to her and I said, ma'am, you're very sick. You have a large clot sitting between your heart and your lungs. I'm worried your heart could stop at any moment. I'm going to give you this medicine, which is a clot buster, to try to break up that clot and save your life. And she looked up at me and she says, well, what's the risk to my baby? And I said, I don't know. But if I don't save your life, then, your baby's going to die also. And so that moment was the genesis of EvidenceCare, and it hit me like a truck because I was, immediately struck with the fact that, physicians and nurses are making these critical decisions every day, multiple times per day, with a complete lack of information at the bedside to help them make the best decisions for their patients. And that's that's been my passion, and my mission in creating EvidenceCare was to be a tool that helps bring that information into the physicians and nurses workflow so that we can help them make the right decision for each patient.
How did it turn out for the woman?
She did very well. So, we administered the medicine. She did very well. The clot actually dissolved. They watched her for a week in the intensive care unit, and then they, induced labor. And she has a healthy baby boy. I get pictures on my phone every year or so from her, and everything went very well.
Good.
Yeah.
What an amazing story, and certainly can see that sort of outcome, feeding your passion here for sure. So out of that, you've managed to build one of the fastest growing healthcare tech companies in the US, despite the state of our economy. How do you go about hiring talent and building a quality culture in that setting?
Yeah, I think, we, like any company, had our concerns at the beginning of COVID and worried whether we were going to make it through, as many companies worried. We were very fortunate to make it through, the first phases of COVID. One of the things we've really focused on over the last few years is company culture. We had a new CEO come in, Bo Bartholomew, who's just amazing person, amazing leader, and really leaned in even more than almost felt comfortable from the perspective of building culture, highlighting values, and that has just, played itself out over the last 2 years to, while many companies have lost key employees, can't find good employees to bring onto the team for the skill sets that they need. We've kept our whole team intact. We've been able to go out and hire and bring on, new, fresh talent, all because we built a company culture that, people want to work for, people are excited. And, it's just sort of it sounds so basic and easy and simple, but not enough companies are taking the time to slow down and prioritize those things. And I really believe that has contributed to our success over the last few years.
Sounds like it. So how do you see this technology evolving in the next few years?
Yeah, we're very excited. We're just now, after 3 to 4 years of working on it, getting the depth of EHR integrations that are needed to really be integrated into the physicians and nurses workflow in a way that when they're using our applications, they don't even know that they're using a third-party application. They just think they're using their EHR, and really helping to make their workflow more efficient, which is what they want to do. They're frustrated with how many clicks they need to make per day. They feel like the electronic health records are sort of holding them back and keeping them from their patients. And so first and foremost, we want to improve their efficiency, make their job easier. And then at the same time, if we can help deliver to them, the care that is most appropriate for that patient, well, then we're helping them take better care of their patient, and, just sort of completes the circle there. In terms of where we see the product evolving, we're doing all the, machine learning and AI with our applications, pulling in patient data, delivering clinical insights, to even go beyond the speed of the published evidence being able to keep up. And so we're very excited about all of that. And it all starts at the physician and nurses level of making their efficiency better, making their job easier, while helping them deliver better patient care.
Yeah, the thing that's sort of trotting around in my brain at the moment too is from the company perspective, the pharmaceutical or medical device companies.
Yeah.
What an amazing, because one of the things, of course, we have to do in industry around post-market surveillance and all that kind of activity, but also kind of keeping an eye out on whether it's expanded indications or, patient outcome data. We don't always have great feedback loops for that kind of information. So it sure seems like you guys are uniquely positioned to provide some important insights back to the manufacturers of the blood clot dissolver, for example, right? And that sort of thing. So is there any sort of plans for the future? Because I know we can also sort of start to tread a little into, like, is this clinical study activity or not? Yep. What does that boundary look like for you guys? And how about the future of that sort of partnership to make that information more available?
Yeah. Well, we think there's a huge opportunity. And, again, depending on what studies you look at, the studies show that it takes, some say 7 to 10 years, some say up to 17 years for knowledge to get translated into the physician's, mindset and applied to their patients. It used to be that pharmaceutical companies could sponsor conferences and, take the physicians out to dinner, but now a lot of those activities are being limited. And so we really do see that, embedded applications are going to be the way that we can deliver evidence-based guidelines to the providers. And it just so happens that sometimes those guidelines include, these newer therapeutics, devices and pharmaceuticals that have been proven to have better patient outcomes, lower costs, but the physicians are still practicing what they learned 10 to 20 years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
So they're still putting patients on Coumadin, and they're not using the new, oral anticoagulants and things like that. And so there is so much opportunity for industry to partner with, the medical societies and also vendors to help get this clinical evidence into the physician's workflow, into the nurse's workflow, and not through the perspective of bias and more expensive things, but evidence-supported, medical society, vetted, proper treatment of your patients based on the latest evidence.
Definitely. Yeah, I just see this huge potential for that.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, to kind of switch gears a little bit here, if you could go back to the start of your career, what would you tell yourself based on what you know now?
It's going to take you 10 times longer, and you're going to need 10 times more capital than you expect.
That's it's always more time and money, isn't it?
Yes. I mean, as a physician entrepreneur, and for all the entrepreneurs out there, when you're raising, your first seed round, and you just say, if I had $1 million, like I could create this whole thing. It's going to be, change the whole universe. It's, and then you go through your first million like that. And then next thing you know, it's 10, 20. And it's like, geez, I wish up front we knew how much it was going to cost and how much time it would take, because we would have had a different plan and approach for first 3 to 4 years of that company. I mean, I felt like I was raising money, 80, 90% of what I was doing was raising money. And that was taking away from our speed to market, our product development, our strategic alliances and client, results. And if I went back and I am counseling, entrepreneurs now in the Nashville market, and, I look at their 1 or 2 year projections and I'm like, nope, it's going to cost way more than that. If you're going to do it right, so that you're not looking over your shoulder every month worried about, hey, we got to go raise more capital.
Definitely. Yeah, I spent a good bit of time doing quality systems in the startup space, and I've seen that so many times. It will always be more expensive and a lot longer than you think.
Yeah.
So a fun question. We had another guest on our show, and I just love this question. So now we're asking it all the time. If I walked into a Barnes & Noble bookstore, where would I find you in that store?
So you would find me in the coffee shop. My wife, used to joke with me. Before I had EvidenceCare and I was just a physician, if I had a day off, I would say I'm going to the office, and she knew that meant I was going to Barnes and Noble, and I would go pull the Kiplingers and the Fortune magazine, and I'd pull all the business magazines, Money magazine. I'd sit there for a couple hours and read all the finance magazines and have a cup of coffee.
Nice. So where can folks go to connect with you and follow along with EvidenceCare's progress?
So myself and my team, we're very active on LinkedIn. You can also go to our website. I think evidence.care/info is the right place to start on our website to learn more about what we do. So yeah, thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity today.
Thank you for your time. It's been fascinating learning about what you guys are doing. Look forward to seeing more.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of From Lab to Launch, brought to you by Qualio. If you like what you've heard, please subscribe and give the show a positive review. It really helps us out. For more information about Qualio, our guest today, or to be a guest on a future episode, please refer to the show notes. Until next time.